Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night once again, everyone. I'm here with my friend Kristen, and we saw Venom a little while ago. So this is going to be a quick little review. So I'll start with you as Guessy. I know you don't know a lot about Venom, the character, as far as comic lore or whatnot.
No,
So
not
okay,
a lot.
I'll fill you in that. So just as someone who does not know the character themselves, how did you like the movie? What did you think in general of it?
I really liked the movie. It was very easy to understand. It led me to know more about the character, and I really liked it.
Oh, okay.
It was action packed.
Oh, okay. Oh, definitely. All right. And I mean, I think it's a fairly enjoyable movie in itself. Now, I will say this, as I'll put in the title, some spoilers here or anything as I educate Kristen on a few things. For those of you who may not know, and I'm sure many of you do know, if you saw Venom, Venom is a character most associated with Spider-Man in the comics, where Spider-Man now, mostly from the MCU and before Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield briefly. But anyways,
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, so in comic lore, there's this whole event, where the Avengers, Spider-Man, all of them they had to go into space for something, and Spider-Man's costume gets ripped at this one point, and he gets a new costume out of this machine, and then they find out it's the symbiote, which in the comic there's this whole bit where he becomes more aggressive as far as kind of like you saw in you saw Spider-Man 3,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so you saw how when Tobey Maguire's Peter got it, he became more aggressive,
Yeah.
attacking people and all that. Okay, so there's all that. And then, okay, you do know the Spider-Man connection, but I guess, like you said, you hadn't really thought about it for. So then, and then Spider-Man realizes what it is and gets it disconnected. So in comic lore, Eddie Brock, like in Venom, he's a reporter, but he works at the Daily Bugle with Peter Parker in the comic lore. So after Peter shuns the symbiote, it latches onto Eddie because he hates him because he feels that he caused Peter to lose. I mean, that Peter caused him to lose his job because he did something that he kind of like in Venom the movie that he shouldn't have done,
Right.
but it was his own fault and everything.
Right.
But he blames Parker for it, and because of their mutual hatred, they become Venom. Whereas in the movie, Venom and one of the other symbiotes, Riot, it's like they have their names in themselves, their own personalities, but Venom is the mix of the symbiote and Eddie itself, not like it had its own name, identity, if you will. But so like in comics, Venom has been a long time villain of Spider-Man and he has like his powers to, shoot webs, stick to walls and all that, obviously, which he doesn't in the movie because there was no Spider-Man.
Right.
So with that, a lot of people were wondering for a while, as it's not part of the MCU, how are they going to do Venom without Spider-Man? But I have to say, the way they presented the movie, it was actually done pretty good. Now, Venom is a very dark character. I mean, you did see, I mean, he eats people.
Right.
And I mean, there's...
Their organs.
Yeah, their heads off
Their
and
heads.
whatnot. And, he does become, what's called an anti-hero. Like, people would refer to Wolverine kind of as an anti-hero at times, whereas he does bad things, but for good reasons.
Right.
And it's based on an arc of Venom after Spider-Man, where he moves to San Francisco, like in the movies, and because it's called Lethal Protector, where he like you see with Miss Chen at the end, he takes on the robber and whatnot. So I mean, as for what it was, not being non-Spider-Man related, I think they did a pretty good job. But like I said, as Venom is a darker character generally, there's been some humor in there. Like Spider-Man's a humorous character. He makes his jokes and quips. There's a lot of humor and jokes in the movie.
Yeah.
Maybe a little more than I think I would have cared for this character. But again, that's coming as a comic fan, someone who's known him. But for an adaptation for those who don't know the character from anything else or very loosely, I think it was very well done. And so overall, I mean, I think it was a pretty good movie. Like on a scale from say 1 to 10 or grade wise, what would you give Venom?
I'd say probably like a 7.
7. Okay, yeah. So like a B B plus, B minus, C.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I would
B
say that
plus.
too. I'd say me personally, I'd say about a B minus because I was
You know a little bit
hoping
more
for
about the background.
Yeah. So I mean, it's one of those things. With,
But I would have never known from the movie.
Exactly.
About
so, and that's why I asked you to give
Right.
your initial thought originally, because, like I said, going in not knowing anything about Venom, I think it would be something people would enjoy very much. And there's been mixed reviews, and even as a fan of the character, the source material, I thought it was a pretty good depiction of it.
Tom Hardy's always really good to look at too, ladies.
Anyways, but yeah, Michelle Williams isn't that bad,
Right? Yeah.
But yeah. So overall, I think it was pretty good. And now the only major spoiler, which any of you on the net has probably seen already, unless you try to avoid it. At the end, there's a post-credit scene where we meet Cletus Cassidy, known as Carnage, which Kristen doesn't know. I mean, I showed her a picture because we stopped by a bookstore afterwards. So Cletus Cassidy, he is a serial killer. As you see, he's in prison. I mean, and there is a major storyline in the Spider-Man comics called Maximum Carnage, where, so Eddie Brock, after he's become Venom and everything, he's put into prison, after he's, a villain, committed crimes, killed people and all that. So he's put in prison because he was separated from the symbiote. And that's one of the things in the comics, their need for each other.
Right.
They've been separated many times, and then the symbiote has sought him back out. So anyways, Eddie Brock is in prison, and then the symbiote comes to break him out. In the chaos that it's in, Cletus Cassidy, I can't remember whether it was his cellmate or just near him, in the chaos that ensues, there's a little bit of the symbiote that's like left behind, and it bonds to Cletus Cassidy. Okay. So again, like, I know as this Venom was more comical, you may not have seen it, but I mean, like I said, Venom does very bad things, and then you attach that to like what you saw in Venom, what he could do to a serial killer.
Right.
So, I mean, Carnage is a brutal character where he enjoys killing people, maiming people, and there's a whole story arc called Maximum Carnage. If you're ever interested, my brother has them all collected, and I can dig them out and everything. Okay. But and I mean that if they were to make a sequel to Venom, it would be an amazing story. But it's very dark. And it's got, a lot of other characters, including Spider-Man and stuff, which Sony doesn't have, so they probably couldn't do it. But they could, like I said, Venom was an interesting adaptation, so I think they could maybe do a Maximum Carnage kind of with other characters that Sony has in the Spider-Man verse. And then at the very end of the movie, there were like a 3 to 5 minute preview of Enter the Spider-Verse, which looks really, really good to me, at least. And like, again, as someone who doesn't know the Spider-Verse, how did it look to you?
I really like the animation. I like that it's an alternate universe that I didn't know about. So I think it's got a pretty good storyline. I think I'd be interested in it. Okay.
And so, like I said, that comes out in December, so maybe we can go see that as well. But anyways, that is our quick little review, our thoughts. If I think of anything else more poignant, I might add it to it later. But I think that's pretty much it. So overall, Venom, is it worth seeing? I would say so, definitely. And as always, feel free to share, subscribe. Hopefully, give us a like. We don't like those. And feel free to leave any comments, thoughts, suggestions. And as always, it's appreciated.